The story begins with two teenagers desperately running for their lives, pursued by hundreds of zombies. Strangely enough, despite the imminent danger, they seem unusually happy. The scene then shifts to a time before the zombie outbreak. That day, a young girl named April has just moved into a new home, where she meets a nerdy boy named Artie. From that moment on, the two become inseparable, spending much of their childhood together and remaining close even as they enter high school. One day, Artie witnesses April sharing an intimate moment with her boyfriend, a sight that crushes him. For years, Artie has secretly harbored feelings for April, but he never had the courage to confess. Later, as they prepare to attend a friend's birthday party together, their conversation flows easily, filled with lighthearted and trivial topics. However, everything changes when April brings up her boyfriend, Brady. Upon arriving at the party, April asks Artie if he would like to accompany her to meet Brady. Wanting to avoid the painful sight, Artie declines, pretending he has someone else to meet. In truth, he simply cannot bear to watch April with her boyfriend. Feeling lost, Artie even considers leaving, unsure of what to do. Fortunately, he runs into Stevenson, an eccentric friend who quickly picks up on Artie's mood and tries to cheer him up. When Stevenson learns that Artie only came to the party for April, he advises him to move on and points out a girl, Sam, who has been eyeing Artie for some time. Taking his friend's advice, Artie decides to approach her. Sure enough, Sam is eager to talk and share stories about her daily life, her favorite foods, and even invites Artie to dinner. However, Artie finds himself unable to reciprocate her enthusiasm. To him, Sam is nothing like April, and that thought alone makes it difficult for him to truly engage. Just then, Stevenson suddenly appears with surprising news. April and Brady are in the middle of an argument. Without hesitation, Artie rushes to find them, only to be met with Brady's mocking laughter. Brady ridicules Artie, taunting him for always coming to April's rescue despite not being anyone significant in her life. April, embarrassed by the situation, turns to Artie and asks him to leave. The rejection stings deeply, leaving Artie both frustrated and hurt. He begins to realize that his presence only seems to cause April trouble. Seeing his friend in distress, Stevenson steps in, offering Artie a way to forget his troubles by smoking together. As Artie listens to Stevenson's words, a thought begins to take root in his mind. He no longer wants to be the same timid, overlooked boy. If he wants a brighter future, he must change himself. As Artie pondered his future, he suddenly noticed April crying. She confided in him, saying that Brady had treated her terribly. Wanting to comfort her, Artie cracked a few lighthearted jokes, eventually bringing a smile back to her face. Before offering to walk April home, he asked about the jacket she had been wearing earlier. When she revealed that Brady had taken it, Artie immediately told her to wait while he retrieved it. Meanwhile, Brady was enjoying himself with his friends when Artie arrived, demanding that he return the jacket to April. This only angered Brady, who responded with a flurry of punches, leaving Artie bruised and battered. Despite this, April felt an unexpected warmth in her heart, realizing that someone like Artie genuinely cared for her. April had long known that Artie had feelings for her. She also knew he was too afraid to confess them. In the end, she revealed that she would be moving to another city the following day due to her father's job. Urging Artie to finally admit his love for her, she waited, but Artie was too scared to say anything. With a bittersweet smile, April bid him farewell and disappeared into her house, while Artie walked home with a whirlwind of emotions. Years passed. After graduating high school, Artie decided to start his own FM radio station, fearing that if he went to university, he would once again face ridicule. Unfortunately, his efforts seemed futile, as his only listeners were his own family members. Realizing that Artie was now 21, his father urged him to find a stable job for a better future, while his mother suggested he see a psychiatrist to overcome the fears that had been holding him back. At first, Artie refused, arguing that many wealthy people had started from nothing, just like him. But after his mother's heartfelt plea, he finally agreed to seek professional help. During his session, he poured out all the struggles he had faced, including the heartbreak of never confessing his love to April. Later that day, Artie shared his experience with his grandfather. His grandfather imparted some wisdom, explaining that fear often traps people in despair, even when their worst fears never become reality, encouraging him to pursue his dreams without worrying about failure. His grandfather urged Artie to go after the things he truly wanted, even if it meant chasing someone who had long since left his life. After receiving advice from his grandfather, Artie began to seriously consider finding April, as he deeply missed his first love. The next day, he finally decided to go to April's last known address, regardless of whether she was still there or not. Knowing this, his family was initially concerned, as Artie had never traveled outside the city. In fact, ever since graduating high school, he had never left home. However, when Artie expressed that, for the first time in his life, he felt truly happy, his parents reluctantly allowed him to go, giving him his grandpa's car for the journey. Without wasting any time, Artie set off on the long journey to April's house. However, after driving just a few miles, he was involved in a sudden accident, leaving the car completely wrecked and unusable. Left with no other choice, Artie decided to walk back home. But as he made his way, he realized he was being followed by a strange and eerie man. In a panic, Artie grabbed a rock and struck the man down, only to discover, too late, that the man had already turned into a zombie. A few hours later, when Artie finally arrived home, he noticed something unsettling about his surroundings. The streets were eerily empty, and he had not seen a single person on his walk back. Stepping inside his house, he was met with a terrifying sight, several zombies lurking inside, ready to attack him. Fighting them off with all his strength, Artie managed to survive. However, he quickly realized that none of the zombies were his family. Unfortunately, he failed to notice one last remaining zombie hiding nearby, which suddenly lunged forward and bit his arm. As the virus spread through his body, Artie began losing control, his mind clouded with hallucinations of April's ever-smiling face. But then, something unexpected happened. He didn't turn into a zombie. Somehow, he seemed immune to the infection. Finding his grandfather's lifeless body, Artie knelt beside him and apologized for wrecking his car. But more than that, he felt an overwhelming sense of guilt, believing himself to be cursed. He had barely left home for a few hours, yet the world had already fallen into chaos due to a mysterious zombie outbreak with no known origin. Despite the apocalyptic turn of events, Artie refused to give up. Determined, he gathered weapons and supplies, preparing himself for the fight ahead. Taking his father's car, he set out on a mission to find April and her family. After traveling a great distance, Artie's car suddenly sputtered to a stop. He had run out of fuel. Left with no alternative, he began walking on foot, making his way toward a church that was 3 miles away from his current location. Meanwhile, the phone in Artie's house suddenly rang. It was April, leaving a desperate voicemail. She was hiding in her room, surrounded by zombies, and begged Artie to come and rescue her. On the other side of town, Artie was already in a dire situation. He had been chased by hordes of zombies and was forced to flee into the forest. There, he unexpectedly ran into Sam, who had already turned into one of the undead. Without hesitation, Artie attacked her. He had never liked Sam in the first place. After dealing with Sam, Artie continued his journey until he stumbled upon a small tent. Just as he was about to investigate, a man suddenly emerged from behind and pointed a gun at him, assuming Artie was a thief trying to steal his supplies. Artie quickly explained that he wasn't there to steal anything. His car had run out of gas, and he had been trying to find a church he had seen on a road sign. However, he ended up being chased by zombies and got lost in the forest. After assessing the situation, the man, who introduced himself as Jack, determined that Artie wasn't a threat. He then called out his daughter, Jess, who cautiously stepped out of the tent. At that moment, Jack explained that he had chosen to hide in the forest because it was much safer than the residential areas, which were now overrun by hundreds of zombies. When Artie noticed a zombie tied to a tree, he asked who it was. Jess revealed that the creature was her younger brother. They hadn't killed him yet, because Jack still held onto the hope that he could be cured if they ever found a vaccine. Artie, however, urged Jack to put an end to it before the zombie managed to break free and attack them. But Jack reassured him that there was nothing to worry about. He had secured the bindings tightly enough to ensure the zombie wouldn't escape. That night, Artie decided to stay with them. While talking to Jess, he confided in her about something shocking. He had been bitten by a zombie, but had never turned. It seemed he was immune to the virus. However, he made Jess promise to keep this a secret, even from her father. He feared that if anyone found out, they might see him as a threat and turn against him. As everyone slept, disaster struck. Jack was suddenly attacked by his own son, who had somehow managed to break free. With no family left, Jess had no choice but to leave with Artie. After a long trek and fighting off several zombies, they finally found a working vehicle, though it was just a small, doorless car. Still, it was enough to keep moving forward in their fight for survival. As they traveled, Jess suddenly leaned against Artie's shoulder. This unexpected gesture brought a small smile to Artie's face. He hadn't felt such closeness in a long time, not since the last time he drove April home. The next morning, Artie and Jess finally arrived at the church. As they stepped inside, they found a large group of people, their faces filled with fear and despair. Soon, a pastor approached them and instructed them to join the others. However, Artie wasn't there just to pray. He was searching for information about survivors of the zombie outbreak, hoping to find his missing family. Upon hearing this, the pastor, who introduced himself as Todd, led them to the back of the church. To their surprise, Todd wasn't actually a real pastor. He was a former hunter who had now taken up hunting zombies instead. Todd admitted that he pretended to be a pastor out of frustration with the fearful people who constantly sought his help. By encouraging them to pray in the church, he kept them calm and out of his way. He then invited Artie and Jess to meet his fellow hunters, a group preparing to head into the city for supplies. Hoping to uncover clues about his family's whereabouts, Artie decided to join them. Before setting out, Todd briefed the group on the dangers of the zombies, explaining that the virus could spread through bites or even scratches. He warned them that if anyone were to be infected, they must not hesitate to shoot before the person could turn into a zombie. Just as they finished preparing their weapons, a mysterious man suddenly arrived. To Artie's shock, it was Stevenson, his childhood friend whom he hadn't seen since they graduated high school. The two exchanged stories, reminiscing about their past. Shortly after, they received alarming news. The zombies had managed to break into the church. Forced to fight them off, the group engaged in battle before quickly resuming their mission. As they drove, Stevenson suddenly veered off onto a different path, insisting that he needed to speak with Artie alone. Once they were alone, Stevenson asked if Artie had truly moved on from April, as he assumed that Jess was his new girlfriend. Artie admitted that he still hadn't moved on from April. Jess, after all, was just a random girl he had met while hiding from a zombie attack. However, as soon as Artie let his guard down, Stevenson suddenly pointed a gun at him. He had noticed the bite mark on Artie's body, a clear sign of a zombie attack. Artie immediately tried to convince Stevenson that he was immune to the virus. Seeing Stevenson unconvinced, Artie revealed the truth. He had been given a special medication by a psychiatrist, a drug capable of halting the spread of the zombie virus as long as he took it twice a day. Once trust was established between them, Artie urged Stevenson not to mention his condition to Todd. If Todd found out about the bite, he would likely kill Artie on the spot. Shortly after, the group stumbled upon a restaurant. Wasting no time, Todd and the others swiftly eliminated the zombies inside. Once the area was clear, Stevenson, who turned out to be a skilled cook, prepared a meal for everyone. His cooking impressed Todd, who thoroughly enjoyed the food. While they were there, Jess unexpectedly invited Artie to dance. The moment stirred up old memories, back when April had found him drunk by the river after receiving a bad grade and getting scolded by his parents. In that moment, Artie had invited April to dance, and without realizing it, he had even confessed his love to her. Unfortunately, he had been too drunk to remember that April had actually accepted his confession. Suddenly, zombies burst into the restaurant, attacking Todd and Jess. Artie and Stevenson were the only ones who managed to escape. Filled with rage, Artie swore revenge against the creatures that had taken away everyone he cared about. The next morning, Artie told Stevenson of his plan. He wanted to find April's new home and see if she had survived the outbreak. No matter what, he couldn't erase her face from his mind. Artie feared losing April more than he feared fighting the zombies. Seeing how much Artie had matured, Stevenson decided to help him reunite with the woman he loved. During their journey, they fought through countless zombies. At one point, they encountered a zombie wearing April's jacket. Without hesitation, Artie reclaimed it, unwilling to let go of something that connected him to her. After battling through waves of the undead, they were suddenly stopped by a gravely injured woman pleading for help. Unsure of what to do, they hesitated, wondering if she might be immune to the virus. Despite her wounds, she had yet to turn into a zombie. But just as they let their guard down, the woman transformed and attacked Stevenson, biting him. Realizing he was doomed, Stevenson pleaded with Artie to eliminate him before he turned into a monster. He didn't want to become one of them or hurt his best friend. In his final moments, Stevenson bid Artie farewell, hoping that he would one day find true love. Before long, Artie finally discovered April's house. After defeating the zombies lurking around, he found April crying in her room. Urging her to leave immediately, he warned that the area was still overrun with zombies. As they fled together, a sense of joy washed over them. They could hardly believe they had finally reunited, despite the world crumbling around them due to the zombie outbreak. Once they managed to escape the pursuing zombies, Artie confessed that he had been bitten. The only reason he hadn't turned into a zombie was because of the medication he had been taking, of which only one pill remained. Realizing the urgency, they needed to find other survivors to share the knowledge of the medicine that could halt the virus's spread. April suggested they head to a refugee camp, as she had heard rumors of people building a safe haven there. Before setting off, Artie returned April's jacket to her, explaining that he had reclaimed it from Brady, who had since turned into a zombie. However, April chose to burn the jacket, not wanting any reminders of her former boyfriend. After a long and arduous journey, they finally reached the refugee camp, where they found many survivors, including Artie's family, who had miraculously made it through the chaos. His father, overwhelmed with pride, praised Artie for saving his beloved. To celebrate his son's achievement, he gathered everyone to share their experiences of surviving the zombie apocalypse. As they sat together, deep in conversation, disaster struck. Without warning, zombies breached the camp's defenses. In mere moments, the settlement was overrun and nearly everyone, including Artie's family, was bitten. In a desperate attempt to save April, Artie was attacked and bitten again, reigniting the zombie virus within him. Left with no choice, April had to pull the trigger, ending the life of the man she loved. Now the sole survivor of the camp, April carried the responsibility Artie had entrusted to her, the last remaining dose of the anti-zombie medication. Determined to make his sacrifice meaningful, she set out to deliver the medicine to a doctor, hoping it would help humanity find a way to stop the zombie outbreak once and for all. The film ends. Moral lesson from the story: if you're too scared to tell someone you love them, you might end up getting punched by your crush's boyfriend or bitten by a zombie. Also, always carry extra gas in your car, or you'll have to walk through zombie apocalypse with no snacks.